Julia Hager. She has a really interesting background, especially about Amazon. How do you get to work at Amazon? Do you finish uni and then that's your first job, or what does it look like for you?
No, not at all, actually. So it was not really known for being a big publisher or advertising out there. So I was like, okay, let's try the interview process. And it's hard, as people tell. Yeah, so it's not super easy to get in and also to master the interviews. That's a multi-step process. They will test you a little bit on your writing skills. Are you capable of writing documents and also guiding through your thought process in a written way? However, back then in 2018, Amazon also had the idea in terms of, hey, let's automate this whole process in order to make it more efficient and maybe have rather an AI deciding back then how to make really better buying decisions. However, the machinery thought, wow, cool, this is a jeans jacket, this will be super hip anyhow in the upcoming season, let's buy thousands of quantities of that specific jeans jacket without, of course, knowing that there would be a print on the back, right? But these are the kind of things that happen when you test AI in these environments. However, imagine we would have really ordered thousands and thousands of these articles.
Especially in fashion, where it's if that is not the coolest thing, you are definitely going to be sitting on that stock for a while. It can go wrong very bad. What was the print?
What was the print? It was back then a very,
Thanks for tuning in to The Humble Venture. This is a podcast where we get to talk to entrepreneurs, high-performing talent, and industry leaders. We get to ask them everything about how they got to where they are, the things they learned along their journey, and what tips and tricks they would like to share with the world from their own niches and perspectives. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please give us a like, give us a follow, leave a comment if you enjoy it. And here's a bit more about today's guest. Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Humble Venture. In this episode, I have the pleasure of sitting down with former Amazon executive leader Julia Hager. She was one of the first 20 employees in German Amazon. She tells us about how it was like, first of all, even getting an interview there, and she gives us some really good interview tips, as well as telling us the early fuck-ups of Amazon, in her own words, that they did around AI. Really fun to listen to. If you've heard about Silicon Valley, the TV show, there's a little reference in there as well. So please enjoy this episode where we get to talk about B2B marketing, standing out in programmatic and offline, the future of AI agencies and automation, as well as the culture of some of these large corporations and how to be not only a better employee, but a better leader. So please sit down, enjoy, grab your coffee, and relax to this amazing episode.
With me today, I have Julia Hager, who's going to do her introduction very soon. She has a really interesting background. I'm really looking forward to talking to her today, especially about Amazon and how it was early days over there. And then we're going to get into automation, the CRM, how to do B2B, PMAX, Google Ads. We're going to get, I think, pretty nerdy. Some digital history as well. I think this is going to be a great format to record what it was like to work at the big tech companies. And people maybe, hopefully, will listen to this in 20 years and be like, that's insane that we're doing this way. So yeah, welcome, Julia. Please let people who don't know about you know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. Very much looking forward. Looked forward to this since a couple of weeks. So very exciting. So yes, I'm Julia. I've been within the digital space or digital marketing for 13 years. I've been through quite a lot of transformations, especially digital transformations. Spent most of my career, 6.5 years at Amazon. And after that, actually focused on digital transformation in more traditional companies, B2B companies, and transformed them towards a digital approach, and spent now my last year within an e-grocery industry. And now I'm looking forward to speak a little bit more about the challenges that are currently out there, and maybe a little bit also about my history and the journey I've experienced so far.
Awesome. Yes. I'm really looking forward to this one too. I definitely want to learn more about everything that you were doing, and maybe to just go through some quick points for everyone. So we want to talk about Julia being at Amazon, how she got it, how do you even get an interview and all of these things? How do you pass that? And then once you get in there, is it fairy tale land as a lot of us see on TV. And then we'll talk about, marketers in the future, which is a crazy topic. We were just discussing it a little bit before we got in here. This is going to be old news probably by next week, but
Hopefully, yeah.
who knows? ChatGPT launched Sora 2. They launched new like agentic mode, which you can build agents kind of like N8N. And then they also are sneaking that they're going to be doing paid ads inside ChatGPT's crazy stuff. Everything happening at the same time, almost a bit too much, to be honest. Yeah, maybe let's start at the beginning. So how do you get to work at Amazon? Do you like finish uni and then that's your first job, or what does it look like for you?
No, not at all, actually. So actually, my career started a little bit different, I would say, because I studied in the Netherlands, and I always focused during my studies on investment banking. So
Okay.
I actually thought, okay, my career will end up, I will become a banker, and that's it. Yeah. And then I'm trying to work up the ladder till I become an MD or partner, and that would be like my full career progression. But honestly, I realized as soon as I worked in London for an investment bank, I realized, wow, I'm really working 365 days. Yes, I know this, but it's a different experience if you experience full-time 365 days. So I thought, okay, I really need a little bit of work-life balance in my life. However, I'm very drawn to numbers. So I really wanted to go into something where numbers are equally important. And that was for me digital marketing. And there I actually started kind of actually first in an agency and also setting this agency up. And then Amazon basically approached me a little bit and said, hey, do you not want to come work for us? We are building up advertising in the German market. And I was like, okay, let's see. They were not known really because Google was there, as you could imagine, as big search engine than other bigger publishers. So I was working at that time as a publisher, which is called Burda. And it was not really known for being like a big publisher or advertising out there. So I was like, okay, let's try the interview process. And it's hard, as people tell. Yeah. So it's not super easy to get in and also to master the interviews. That's a multi-step process. However, once you master that, this is also why I spent 6.5 years there. I had quite an amazing journey. I really loved working for the company. And yes, it's very challenging on the one hand, but you also learn a lot, which you can implement in other companies. And this is something I was really grateful for, to be that part of that journey. Yeah.
Okay. That's so cool. I have so many questions and I'm so curious.
Yeah.
You mentioned like this is back in 2014.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
LinkedIn is not really a thing yet. So how do they even find you? Like, do they know you from some event, or how do you even make that network connection of them being like, oh, Julia, she's great. We should definitely have her. How do you build a personal brand big enough back then?
So there were two connections at that time. One of the connection was I was working for Burda at that time, and we still had Amazon as an affiliate partner, kind of integrated, basically as a little bit of a money machine. And this is where I was basically first in contact with them, because that was also kind of part of our bigger money machine from an affiliate perspective, to link our articles to the web shop, yeah, or to e-commerce ecosystem. And this is how I basically were in touch with them, with like first conversations on the other side. And then the second part, they really sent me a message on LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn was
Really?
not that big back then, but they said, hey, we have a certain interesting job maybe for you. Would you be interested? And then I knew some people who started working there, like close friends of mine. And they also told me, hey, there are super young people. They're really trying to build up things. They believe in it will be as big as in the US. And I was like, okay, let's try. And maybe let's become part of that Amazon culture and Amazon experience. Yeah.
That's so cool. And then you started obviously the interviews. And here I think a lot of people, myself included, are very curious, because many of the interviews for these big tech companies are infamous for being either super hard or super weird or super technical. Do you have something that you remember from the interview that you took with you? Like, wow, that was different.
Yeah. So I would say, yes, these interviews are totally different. I 100% agree. However, it's always good because At Amazon, these interviews are more like behavioral based. So meaning they ask you a lot about your previous experience and how you managed through these experience in a STAR model. So what was the situation, task, action, and result? And how you guide through this. I think this is something you can easily learn. I would tell this also to the audience. So practice this, and then you're kind of getting used to how they are modeled and how you can maybe also guide through this interview process, because those will happen in multiple steps. They will ask you situative questions to understand more about you and your background and what you specifically did or implemented and what was your part and contribution to that project or to that initiative. So that will be always part of that interview process. And then a second part is also in terms of writing, your writing skills, because Amazon is a document focused company, which is also probably different than other companies who work with PowerPoint or whatsoever. They will test you a little bit on your writing skills. Are you capable of writing documents and also guiding through your thought process in a written way? And then the last is also kind of checking your commercial skills in terms of Excel testing and some other kind of tasks, but that's always dependent on the role you're applying for and which kind of level. Is it more a junior or more senior level you're applying for within that role?
Okay. Interesting. I really like the part about your writing skills.
Yeah,
Maybe nowadays that's going to be hard to qualify
true.
because everyone can just do like AI generated. But back then, that's a very interesting way of screening people. Yeah, I don't remember that at my interviews, for example. But I do remember the STAR method. So that's definitely worth for people to look up if they haven't. I think that's a really good framework.
Yeah,
For
because that's
sure.
similar to Google, right? I think Google
Yeah,
is doing the same approach with the STAR model, asking
they
situative
are.
questions. So Amazon and Google, I think they have a lot in common in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But I definitely didn't do any writing stuff, for sure. Nothing. But it was definitely a lot of like behavioral as well, like previous situations and things like this for me as well. And there was a lot of the STAR, like they were expecting STAR type of
Yeah,
answer. So
exactly. Yeah.
situation, task, and all of this. But yeah, that I think they probably have taken from each other in the recruiting, which makes a lot of sense because they're taking from each other all the time, right? Even today. I don't know if you saw like Meta hiring some crazy engineers for like millions in
Yeah.
contracts.
I know. I also still remember when I was, building up the advertising business back then. And that was also, we were 20 people at that time in the Munich
Yeah.
office. And now these are 500, I think, or whatsoever.
Jeez.
However, crazy, huh? And now imagine I worked still on Google tools, so DSP servers. And then we did this whole transformation going from these Google tools to Amazon own tools. And of course, you can imagine there was like a huge discussion, I think, back then at that time, or fighting between Larry and Jeff, those big companies, in terms of what is happening here, who's really winning the advertising space. Because at that time, Google thought, well, okay, Amazon wants to also move into the advertising sphere. Good luck. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
only one giant being out there. And I think they slowly but surely really get an immense part of that pie from a percentage perspective, which I think no one expected at that time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we heard rumors when I was working at Google that like back in the days, Amazon was something like 70% of all the ad spend on Google. I don't know if that's true, or did you ever hear any similar rumors?
Wow, this is something I can't confirm. I don't know. Because you also know now Temu back then probably, yeah. But now all the
Yeah.
other players are coming in and they are fighting for certain shares. I don't know. Could be.
Yeah. Temu is definitely they're bidding hard on Google's
Yeah, exactly.
for sure. Oh wow. Okay, no, really amazing. So let's just maybe go through a bit about. So you're at Amazon. You came in here. You did some amazing interviews. Documentation is really important, obviously, at Amazon. What are some of the key things that you either have memories or processes that you still take with you to this day? And maybe some interesting things that you saw at Amazon, growing from like 20 people to, I don't know if you were with the journey until 500, but
Yeah.
like, what was that growth journey like?
I think, honestly speaking, there are so many tools that I'm still using up to today. And because they have implemented so many great mechanisms which you can use in various companies, to be honest, and building up, especially if it comes to, hey, there is not a process yet existing. How can you build this up and scale? And I tend to call them playbooks. Yeah. Basically, I think the whole machinery, how Amazon is looking at data on a regular basis, is something I've taken with me on my journey throughout my career so far. So if you think about how you like weekly business reviews, WBRs, QBRs, yearly business reviews, really taking them, like, I think that's a really good framework to look at data, how you look at data, how you're interpreting data, and also defining a way forward, not only seeing the problem, but it's always connected the problem to solutions. And I think this is an ultimate framework, how you can be successful at Amazon, always having these framework specific, looking at data, and then also finding answers to these problems at hand. I think that's one thing. And their WBR, QBR, yearly kind of reviews are a good way to go. And this is something I would also advise if you want to be successful within Amazon. This is one part. This is crucially important to know your numbers and be able to have an impact on them as well. And then a second part, I think, which is also crucial, is we have these, or Amazon had these leadership principles. And these are a fundament, I think, also how I became as a person. And there are certain nuances I still take away with me, because I think they are not only relevant from an Amazon perspective, or probably at Google you had the same, but also within other companies you can use them. There are quite some good capabilities in there, which you can teach also other people. I taught them primarily also my teams. Once I had bigger teams, like 50 people, to help them kind of which leadership skills are important to really expand into bigger roles. And I think this is something I would also look into, not only, hey, how you can impact revenue-wise, top line or profitability-wise, a certain P&L, but also secondly, what are the leadership principles you can bring as a person, not only to you, but to a wider organization to influence that kind of organization.
Okay, I see. Was there ever any tip within that, like specifically to leadership? One that I can share was like solve your manager's problems. That's a great tip that helped me many times.
I agree.
I don't know if you have any similar tips.
I think having actually that kind of ownership mentality with you. And what does this bring? This can be a very broad, right? A very broad kind of definition of what is ownership like. But having that natural sense of, hey, not stopping where actually your area of responsibility lies, but rather thinking beyond that scope, how you can be successful as a team, as an organization overall. And I think that really helps as well. Not only helping your manager, I know where you're getting at, but really thinking maybe beyond that, because then you're not only solving the problem of your manager potentially, but also maybe issues that go beyond your scale and scope normally that you have written down in a certain job description, so to speak, right? Because sometimes it's about building these beyond connections that really help you to be successful in a certain role or capability.
I think that's a great tip, because it kind of forces you as well to look beyond what you're doing and try to actually have an impact. So I totally agree. And there's a lot of ownership within that, of understanding where you are, what you can and can't do. But it also makes you kind of want to take ownership of your knowledge and understanding what you don't know,
exactly.
What you should know.
Yeah. And also having that kind of ownership, it's not only about how brilliant you can be, right? I think ownership also is a lot of how brilliant you can only be as brilliant, from my point of view, as your team is, or the people you work together with. And if you nail this down, I think then it's not only, hey, you support your manager, but you support your peers in an overall organization. And this is, I think, why I also like to be a manager, because I saw really potential in other people growing beyond me and growing beyond my skills, which I think is wonderful as a manager to see, because you don't need to be necessarily always as a leader to be that person in the room knowing everything. If you have the right talent, and the right people. Oh, how do you see that? Maybe also from your perspective.
No, I agree. I think if you want to be the person that knows everything, you're going to have a very hard time being good at anything. That's how I see it, because you can't be the best at everything for sure. And delegating is it's always brought up, but it is one of the most important things. But just delegating isn't enough. And I agree with you, like teaching people how they should think about the tasks they're given and thinking that they're solving bigger things also gives them a lot of purpose.
Exactly, yeah.
Other than fix this because the KPI sucks, or like your quarterly business review is looking bad, or whatever. It's like give them something to actually want to solve other than make this number green.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's super interesting. And talking about ownership, I have here something written down. The fuck ups in automated media buying.
Oh, God. Yeah.
What does this mean? It says 2018 and fashion.
Yeah. So back then at Amazon, so Amazon is always known for trying things first, being the first, being the first one, also trying new things. But now you have to imagine like the fashion industry is quite specific, meaning normally if you select the products, you have a certain vendor manager that is going to buy, looking at the products, because that's also what fashion is about, right? Touching the fabrics, looking how does the clothes or the shoes look like, what kind of fabric are they, and then decide and actually based on the selection you're seeing what to buy and in what quantities to buy. However, back then in 2018, Amazon also had the idea in terms of, hey, let's automate this whole process in order to make it more efficient and maybe have rather an AI deciding back then how to make really better buying decisions.
Wow, that's a very ambitious goal.
Yeah, exactly. That's not only an ambitious goal, but it's completely like in terms of also changing how the industry is working, right? Imagine very disruptive from that point of view because the
100%.
industry was working way differently than you were. And of course, people tend to work with people. And I think this is still there today. I think we will touch upon more a little bit later on this. Now AI coming in more and more, also from a consumer to consumer experience. But also back then, of course, the suppliers also needed kind of that human touch. And of course, it's still existing at Amazon for, let's say, bigger fashion suppliers out there. But still back then, if you think about like evergreen products, like a green black t-shirt, it also makes sense to automate these things, right? This black t-shirt, it will be there. That might be a seller continuously, no matter if it's winter or summer, it might sell because people also need it. Yeah. So yes, from a certain product category perspective, it does make sense. However, it was a disruption to that industry because then you also needed to teach the suppliers, hey, you have to upload sheets differently now. And then a machinery will basically decide what quantity I will buy.
That's scary.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, and I've been through this whole transition, and as you can imagine, this machinery is also learning, right? It's learning with the inputs it's getting, because also in these line sheets, the suppliers were uploading, there were images in there. They are not as detailed as you see the products in person. So of course, you can imagine that machinery made mistakes at the beginning of their time and came up with a lot of funny quantities or values to order from a specific product category. And there were a lot of things you then had to intervene manually, override, and so forth. So it was not only kind of, let's call it a fuck up for the suppliers, but also, of course, internally from our side, because it was not fully working as we wish it would have worked at that time. Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? Have you seen that series Silicon Valley?
No, unfortunately not yet.
Okay, there's a scene in there. You should see it. I'll send you the link later.
Okay.
But essentially, there's this guy who built an AI very early on, and he builds it to kind of do what you're saying. Let's make things more efficient. And he does it for the entire office. And then he asks it to, can you make lunch cheaper and be efficient? And then it ends up buying like 2,000 kilograms of very cheap meat because he asked it for cheap hamburgers. And it kind of reminds me of that.
Kind of what happened. Or you can imagine, because in the image, one thing happened once to me. Not for one vendor. I had once like a jeans jacket. the AI only saw like the front image, because you only in the pictures you had so far when you uploaded, which was also a mistake at that time, the front image. However, on the back of the jeans jacket, you had like a full print.
Yeah.
And there was a male jeans jacket. So normally we do, or Amazon at that time also bought fashion pieces, but not like in bigger quantities. However, the machinery thought, wow, cool, this is a jeans jacket. This will be super hip anyhow in the upcoming season. Let's buy thousands of quantities of that specific jeans jacket without, of course, knowing that there would be a print on the back, right? But these are the kind of things that happen when you test AI in these environments.
Yeah, it can go wrong very bad. What was the print?
What was the print? It was back then a very like a kind of tribal printing.
Okay.
So not for everyone, I would say.
A bit niche, maybe.
Yeah, it was a little bit niche.
Okay. Did you buy thousands of them? Yeah, that can be very expensive mistakes when put into production too soon.
Exactly. But however, we were able to detect, or I was also able to detect this mistake and then interfere. However, imagine we would have really ordered thousands and thousands of these articles. Then all of them would have kept getting into discount or into sales, trying to get rid of them somehow. Yeah.
That's very tough. Yeah, especially in fashion where it's like, if that is not the coolest thing, you are definitely going to be sitting on that stock for a while.
Exactly.
Even at discount.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. So even the big tech giants get it wrong sometimes.
Correct.
But that's a great example for people to learn from. Like, even Amazon building AI early days, things weren't perfect, and now it's 7 years later.
But 7 years later, things aren't perfect, right? Or
yeah, no, you're right.
I don't know. How do you see this actually, this whole transformation? I think we also wanted to a little bit look into PMAX. That's also
Yes.
AI driven, right? So moving now a little bit from automated buying to now this whole transformation that happened from shopping to PMAX.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit. I ask you now a question, a little bit the other side
Perfect.
around.
Yeah, you're the interviewer now.
Because you have been at Google, huh? So
Yeah.
how do you actually think this whole transformation was? I would like to get your opinion first before I maybe share mine with you.
Yeah. PMAX is, for people who don't know, it's a campaign. I call it like all in one, because that's kind of what it is. You want to show video ads, you want to show image ads, you want to show on Gmail, you want to show on the discovery feed, on search results, on shopping results. It's all there. It's all in one big campaign. Is this great? No. And many times it can get things a bit awkward. It is a bit of a black box, but now we're getting some clarity. But in the early days, it was like full on black boxes. Like, you really don't know where the spend is going. You have no idea. You can only deduct through like digging through some super weird reports and kind of being like, maybe it's spending here. And obviously, since I was working with the agencies back then, and this was just being launched, I was working with the Danish market, and the Danish market, to give some context, they're very skeptical people.
I know.
Maybe like the Germans.
I had a team in Nordics, so
yeah,
it's not about the Danish. I would say the Swedish as well. So the whole northern part is very skeptic. 100% agree on this. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're very skeptical to not trying things, but saying it worked because of this thing. Attributing great results to things for the Nordics is a very hard thing to do. And I would say my opinion on PMAX right now is it sounds cooler than what it is, and it's a bit dumber than you think. That's how I would explain it today.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way I would say to think of it is not necessarily performance max, but maybe attribution max. So it's the best campaign if you want to consolidate as many conversion points across Google's ad placements as you can in one place. That's probably what it's best for. Are those conversions incremental? Not necessarily. Not necessarily making you any more money, but you're giving the machine more data.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a long way of saying, doesn't necessarily make you more money. It does probably give you a bit more data, though. Just a bit more.
Yeah,
that's how I would explain it.
Right, in terms of, I would actually kind of say what you're saying. I would agree with these points. Also from the experience I had. And also looking back then when I was at Takt, I've been through this whole transformation. We've been from a catalog business to a digital business, but Also in terms of from transforming our campaigns from shopping campaigns to PMAX campaigns. And, there was this kind of urgency, I think, which forced us, I had the feeling of forcing, I use this word now, forcing us to use PMAX. It was not kind of something we've chosen. Someone chose, I had the feeling, for us, which was Google at that time, right? Or shopping, whatever. However, I think we were not prepared for what fully happens or happened, because somehow, yes, we know, or we were aware an AI would steer these campaigns based on top performance. However, what does that mean for that specific case, right? So what is top performance for you? Is it awareness? Is it sales? Because there's a huge difference for me. Awareness goal is something else than really driving sales and being very focused on a CAC or a cost revenue ratio or ROAS, right? These are totally, completely different goals. And now you had kind of moving into a direction of a tool, which is somewhat touching upon both, if I'm honest, right? Because all of a sudden you're also touching awareness KPIs, but at the same time, you're also touching sales or lower funnel KPIs, which was quite confusing, and also confusing to steer, because you didn't know where the results were coming. And then you had like images uploaded. I still remember this, it's still the setup, right? So you have images uploaded which are then connected with a text. And then all of a sudden the machinery is deciding what to put together. I think this is still wild. Yeah, because things can end up in terms of a way which might not be what you're wanting to achieve.
Yeah, those texts better be generic.
Yeah,
God forbid that they're specific.
Have to be prepared for this, right? In terms of, okay, you cannot be like this. If you think about the marketing funnel, really, okay, very funnel down in terms of the sales part, and then having very specific conversion focused text, because that's also not what PMAX is somehow about.
Yeah.
However, also, if I think about, so I thought about it before we now talked about it in this podcast, and then I thought there were some lights in PMAX, which I think was for us really focusing as well more on lower funnel and automating this. So we back at that time also implemented AI for our campaigns in terms of using a valuation model, which was very specific. I programmed with my team together to automatically steer these campaigns and giving that information, connecting that with the PMAX campaigns and steering only that lower funnel activities in an automated way.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, and honestly speaking, that had quite a decent or positive effect on our ROAS development, CRR development, whatsoever. However, we also needed to test and learn. So we started with one MVP in one country and then rolled this out. However, of course, we also had some difficulties while rolling this out, because we needed to change certain algorithms in order to make it really fit to the market and to the market specific needs, and also needed to change some parameters from that algorithm. So it was a bumpy journey. But having said that, at the end, the results were good we were having, and we needed time, of course, to adjust. And if you have that time and want to spend more time and resources and knowledge in that topic, it can be a good channel, right? Specifically, if you think about automation. But I wouldn't fully still spend 19% of my budget on fully automated campaigns.
Yeah, neither would I. And like to this day, and I think you said something which makes what I'm about to say very true. What you said is, I think PMAX is a confused campaign because it touches both lower funnel, mid funnel, and upper funnel, which have different KPIs.
Yeah, exactly.
They have different goals, and you should steer them differently. And ideally, you should have different budgets and potentially many times even different stakeholders. But here we have this one like Frankenstein campaign that's kind of doing everything kind of bad. And then you give it a ROAS target, and then it does none of the mid and upper funnel because it quickly realizes, oh, I can't produce a ROAS on images and on video within whatever the attribution window is, which is usually 30 days for e-coms.
Exactly.
So I'll just stop spending there. And then you get back to the point of like, well, what the hell was the point of this campaign then?
Yeah, exactly. So I think still PMAX is kind of the way forward, or at least how Google is approaching it, or advertising it kind of in a way. However, I think you need to be very careful how you use this machinery.
I think so too. And I think there's also a problem with PMAX. Like, put it this way, I think PMAX is great if you have very little in-house knowledge and you don't want to hire external consultants or agencies to come in. And you just kind of want something that kind of works. You don't want to spend too much time on it, and you can put some money on it and kind of forget it. In those situations, it's kind of a great tool. Just put some money on it, forget it. It's great for like small business owners and stuff like this. It works kind of like 75%. If they were to do it themselves, I'd say from what I've seen, they can probably get 25% to work. This one could get you to 75. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than what they will be able to do within their limited knowledge and time and resources? Probably. And that's great. But for anyone that has the resources, I honestly think, splitting things out makes way more sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I'm very curious now, because B2B is a big topic. Google is the worst channel for doing B2B, in my opinion, because of how hard it is to attribute things, especially on long sales journeys, and even sending conversion data back in time is like super complex. And how do you measure that? And there's so many questions that come up. I feel like it's just a very hard vertical to touch on in general, lead generation and all of this. And PMAX in that is even trickier, in my opinion. What about in your opinion? How have your experiences been when it comes to PMAX and B2B sales?
Yeah, so what you said, yes, that's absolutely a challenge, especially within the B2B business, right? If I share with you my experience, normally we had attribution windows of 90 days, which I think is crazy, right? If you think about
so long.
It's a very, very long journey in comparison to a B2C customer and how they are looking for products and converting in the digital sphere. So yes, B2B tendency has longer attribution windows. However, I would still, and this is, I think we really had a competitive advantage towards other B2B retailers out there, is I think B2B, you still want to have that B2C experience. And I tell you why. Because and this is why when I came, that was my wording, right? Because the buyer on the other side of the window or on the screen, they are also used to kind of that B2C experience in terms of, hey, they're clicking somewhere and then they're ordering online. Yeah, and have also a smooth shipping experience. So that same person is also responsible in most of the B2B businesses to buy products, right? So actually you need to offer a similar experience to really have a good CX in place. And there it comes to how can you really excite the buyer on your side from that B2B organization. And I think, yes, you have longer attribution windows. That's absolutely given. But at that time, I worked with Google and other partners together to make sure we can anyhow track and trace it and build also internal capabilities, data models, and so forth to also track and trace it in our systems. However, still, I think digital is important, specifically also within the B2B sphere. I tell you why, because this whole interaction, people are still searching. They are looking for comparison. Yeah, if they're looking, let's say, for how to stack up their office or how to stack up their fulfillment centers. Of course, they are browsing. They are looking for different providers and so forth. So yes, you need to be there. You need to create certain awareness, and then in the best case scenario, offer the best product, experience, price, all those 3 Ps. And I think, yes, attribution window is one thing, but on the other hand, you need to also be there for that buyer on that side who's used to a B2C experience. So yes, also digital channels do play a crucial role because you still have that B2C mindset in the buyer's head. And therefore, you can only work with partners together to really get enough data in to then, and also your internal data teams, tech teams, to set up a good attribution model and a good kind of tracking system to make then rather, B2B decisions and how to steer the campaigns properly.
I think I love the points you're making. And looking at it from my perspective now, as you were saying that, I was thinking, I think PMAX had an unintended action on marketers on two sides, one being video and the other being attribution. Because it's exactly what you're saying, right? People have been forced to be like, oh, we need a video for YouTube now, all of a sudden. Didn't have one before. And now they're like, well, PMAX is here. The team at Google is just like on my neck. Like they need a video. I don't have any videos. Fine, let's make a video. So I feel like that's one aspect. And the other is exactly what you're mentioning. How do you now measure maybe a more complex purchasing journey? And how do you attribute this in the back end? And now people start asking questions. Oh, but is YouTube really driving? Is display really driving? Are these things actually driving? How do we measure a successful lead on the B2B side? All of these things become discussions. And I don't think that was Google's intentions, but those were definitely the outcomes of many calls that I was listening in on the B2B side with customers, where it was like, maybe we should do something on the mid funnel to try to raise brand awareness, which had absolutely never been a discussion before.
Exactly. And that's kind of what it triggered as well. It triggered this whole mid funnel conversation. Not really so much the upper funnel, because we did this rather a little bit differently in terms of still also sending out catalogs, being present in also kind of very specific newsletters, LinkedIn, other things. Yeah. However, this mid-funnel discussion all of a sudden started, which you never touched upon in that detail. And I think back at that time, I think that was actually 2023, I think, when Google introduced Demand Gen, which is typically for me also mid-funnel, right? So you had at that time now PMAX, which is kind of everything a little bit, but primarily focused mid-funnel and lower funnel. And then all of a sudden, they also introduced this whole Demand Gen topic, which honestly speaking, I'm a huge fan of Demand Gen.
Same.
Because it's really driving that middle funnel. There was never such a product that really touched upon consideration in that extent and retargeting customers in that extent. And for us, and yes, we also started the first discussions. Actually, as you said, we needed new assets all of a sudden. It was not only this whole, okay, let's start creating videos for now and try that demand gen gap in combination with also PMAX campaigns, and then think about what do we also exclude from PMAX, because there are certain things you can exclude, right? And what is then maybe performing better in the middle funnel. And I think this is something, if you had the combination of both and truly, surely, but steadily understood how those two, PMAX and Demand Gen, are kind of working together or separate from each other, you could optimize the campaigns accordingly. And I think it started within our organization a really cool discussion on more assets to really also do this channel expansion to really attract customers on other ways, because like really in the B2B sphere, products are need to be a little bit more explained of what you're really doing and what you can offer as a service as well. So that became a really interesting channel in combination with anyhow all the channels that were out there to drive kind of awareness, sales, rather consideration, and then rather let them convert on a later stage. But yes, of course, the more I think about it and what you just said, it's not a straight journey anymore of the customers. And this is what it gets really complicated, is this whole customer journey and mapping the first customer interaction with then the conversion, especially think about this whole cookie implementation, first party data and so forth, which led to a whole complete black box in terms of how really customers are completing their customer journey.
Yeah, that whole thing about like, especially in Europe and probably like in California and some other states, like GDPR, e-privacy, how cookie banners look and what consent you take and what data you log and all of these things. That was a huge shift. And I think that was also one of the main reasons behind PMAX as well. It's like, as I said before, I would rather call it Attribution Max, because it's kind of what it solves to some extent. It's like, or if I can't get the cookie consent on this one, maybe I get it on that one, or on the video or on the image or anywhere else. So it kind of helped creating this stitching of paths towards one conversion point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's how I see it. But how do you then integrate all of that into CRMs? because on the B2B side, that's like one of the most important things. It's like, great, we're buying leads, but then are they marketing qualified? Can we get them in a sales call? Are they then sales qualified? And then finally, are they actually closed? And then how do you close the gap from the journey in between to the final touch point, to then sending that information to the first touch point to tell the first touch point, well done?
I think what you basically just said sounds like super easy. Well, somehow it's not that easy, to be honest. So I think there are certain ways how we approach it from a CRM perspective as well. But I could talk for hours in that topic. Yeah. So, and we don't have that much time though. So just maybe giving you a little bit of glimpse of what we have been doing. So first of all, yes, you have certain information if someone ordered from your, let's say, web shop, e-commerce site, whatsoever, right? Normally there is an email and you can approach that person if they gave you a double opt-in, right? Very important factor in being also legally compliant, GDPR compliant. You have to have that double opt-in. Otherwise, you anyhow not, from a CRM perspective, possible to contact that person on a frequent basis. So I think this is something, what is truly important is having, first of all, checking, hey, where do you actually have those GDPR requirements and which leads can you actually follow up upon and still contact, right? And then it was a huge part in terms of automizing this. So if you think about journey setups, welcoming the customers to really churn prevention, making sure those customers do not churn after certain, let's say, purchases they made from you, and what are certain churn patterns. And this is what I also automized with the team in terms of with AI, predictive kind of churn pattern modeling into kind of journeys and implementation of those. And then I think you touched upon a point as well. So, okay, then you have these constant leads, but yes, there are also other people, right? So people that might not order, right? Or that haven't ordered yet. So also figuring out if they got their consent or if they didn't get their consent. So I can, in that sphere digitally, I can only play with my contacts I'm having, but still kind of trying to trigger an initial sale. Basically, also in an automized way. Could be a gamification, telling the customer, hey, here's certain incentives or whatsoever, or maybe giving credits. You can imagine about multiple things about triggering that sale. And then there's this part in terms of, especially in the B2B space, where not only I think email, push, or whatever notifications or CRM communication is necessary, but also having that touch point with the salesperson. It becomes crucially important in the B2B sphere. So having that marked in the system and telling the sales representative to call also that prospect client in terms of saying, hey, there was an initial intent there, and automizing that process so that the kind of sales representative gets a notification knowing, hey, I should call that prospect because they signaled interest in our product or in the brand or whatsoever. I think that's also crucially important, specifically in the B2B sphere, that human touch and that human connection, because the projects are bigger and need customization, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is what we also tremendously used, is that human interaction and human touch. And then still what I also tend to do and like to do is with an all non-opt-outs, trying printing, programmatic print, right? So yes, there are some old addresses there, but companies do not move so easy. So in B2B,
True.
So yes, individual B2C customers, they move apartments. So it's quite difficult to maybe approach them via print mailing. However, you have more luck with the B2B clients if you use the addresses there and also triggering some incentive specifically with customers that didn't give their consent. And it's also nice because they have something they can touch, maybe open, get an incentive, and they can also implement it in their journey or directly call the sales representative. And I think there are multiple ways to automate this to really have like a funnel experience for that customer.
I love that. Out of curiosity, when you're sending these like physical mails, because I've never done that, for example, I've been like born and bred digitally. Feel like I'm being converted right now. Who do you send this letter to? Do you send it in the name of the POC? Do you send it in the name of the C-level you want to impact? Or who are you sending these like catalogs to? Or is it just maybe a bit more generic
So
prints?
it depends also which kind of contact we still had in the database. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes also in the database, it also always depends on data, as you can imagine, right? So sometimes you have the CEO name there. Sometimes you only have the company name there. Sometimes you also have the name of the buyer in the database. And then using this specifically. Or what we also from time to time try to do, or I try to do, is also enriching data. So you working with companies together who can do data enrichment, meaning there are certain things you do not know about the company or about the details, and then working with the supplier together to enrich those data points. Yeah, and
Nice.
that could be then, as you mentioned, the name of the CEO or the potential buyer or the company address.
Okay, that makes sense. Wonder if that's going to work if I try it. What did you send them? Did you send them like a Amazon gift card?
No, we basically gave them, so we tested it. So marketing is for me all about testing, right?
Yeah.
So yes, we tested incentives in terms of, okay, is it rather a euro value or should we give them gifts? Like really sending a gift and a box and then a piece of paper on it. So it really depends. I think it's a lot of test and learning a little bit what is really working well. Or as you know, the codes, right? You send something in terms of it's then not a incentive, but it's rather a code they can then type in the web shop and then directly their basket value is
Yeah, you
reduced,
track
right?
it.
And then you also can track it easily in terms of the incentive really played out and is working. And I can only share from a programmatic perspective in the B2B sphere, it was working always quite well. High conversion rates, which you would normally not expect if you do like a generic print mailing, because it's customized to that person with the name and driving really high conversion rates. Once on a print mailing, I think 15 or 20% conversion rate, which is huge for print mailing. Yeah, sometimes you would think about that from a digital perspective, because the people, they have something in their hand and it's really B2B, right? Their name is on it. It's still right. Maybe they're still working for the company, or at least the company address is right. And then people using this as well, once they know, hey, they also get like certain percentages off or even a discount or whatsoever.
Hey, 15% conversion rate. I'm sure a lot of people that will hear that are going to be like, no way. No way.
Let's try it. Let's try it tomorrow.
Okay, I love that. That's a really cool. That's a really cool tip. I'm gonna note that down actually, and maybe I'll try that as well. We'll see if that works.
Yeah, try it, because you have to stand out, specifically, for my opinion, today. In today's world where you spammed with banners, spammed with ads out there, you can only make a difference while being different. And everyone is like thinking print is dead. Yes, it is kind of dead, but still you can make a difference, making a personalized difference.
Love that. Can you repeat that? You can only make a difference by being different. Is that what you said?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's an amazing quote. Okay, so I have a few final discussion points.
Yeah.
That I wanted to see if we can get through. AI, we haven't really touched on it. I mean, we kind of touched on the early of AI and Amazon messing it up and ordering 1,000 very niche denim jackets almost. But with AI coming into the picture, you having been in the industry, me having been in the industry, and us seeing all of these agencies, like the rise of the digital agency era, what do you think AI is going to mean in terms of expectations from clients, compensation structures, and workload from like the actual agencies? Like, what are they actually going to do if everything starts getting automated? What is your imagination of like just a couple of years in the future? Who's going to be winning? Because I think there's going to be a new wave.
I think so too.
And I think a lot of people are going to get left behind and drown in the sea.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think specifically, I just said it yesterday, I think I had a networking event as well where I talked with one person specifically about this topic. I think specifically the digital sphere, marketing and e-commerce will be the first being touched upon that. And I tell you why, right? So I see already a lot of disruptions in my area. And I think which was really a aha moment was 2 weeks ago. So I was invited by IBM and they showed how they transition or think that digital organization will look like, let's say, in 2 years from now. And this blew my mind. So yes, everyone heard about agents and how agents work together, but they really built up a complete marketing organization only out of AI agents. So basically they were showcasing this. Let's assume now you have 500K budget. They played this through and you do this whole media planning. So what kind of channels do you book in order to get, what's your goal? Is it awareness driven? Is it sales driven? And what creatives do you need? Let's be honest, you need quite a big or people in that team working on that because you do need to do analytics, looking into, okay, what performed quite well in our last setup. Then you need people also looking into, okay, doing analysis in the certain accounts and then also scheduling, of course, the campaigns. And then you need graphic designers designing the assets. If you have like video assets, graphics and so forth. So
Big task.
big task. Normally, I would say even with the graphics, depending how fast some organizations are, could take some weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saying specifically, weeks, because I know some organizations are faster and others are a little bit slower. So rather says, let's say 2 weeks in a nutshell, if you have a very fast organization. So they typed this in as a prompt. And then this prompt was taken by a lead agent, which is then separating their task to 5 other agents. One who's doing an analytic agent. Then you have a Google or performance marketing agent. Then you have a graphic designer agent and a QA agent. And one prompt is done. And then this lead agent is then talking with the other agents and splitting tasks across these agents. It approximately took 10-15 minutes, including first creatives, to then get this prompt back and see, hey, this would be the plan with an external link to the plan, some visualizations, and then you could say accept or decline. And if you click on accept, the campaigns are already scheduled in the tools and you can set the campaigns live. Of course, keep in mind the technical architecture is set up in such a way that it would work. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the underlying assumption here, which is quite difficult for a lot of companies to come to that phase. But imagine this would happen. I had a team which was only concentrated over the size of 20 people doing this. Yeah. One part of my team completely gone. Or completely, let's say, capabilities moving while you have agents taking over this role, which I think is mind-blowing, to be honest.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Like from a customer perspective, the first question that comes to my mind is obviously, that sounds great. How do I buy it? From an agency perspective, it sounds like, oh no, I'm dead. And from the platform's perspective, it's like, I have to be the first one to build this, right? That like I'm seeing these three.
Exactly. Yeah. Agree.
These 3 players.
Yeah.
So first of all, is this going to get commoditized and built? And what is your bet? Like, is agencies going to have any value add along this whole automated process?
I think yes. I think how remarkable in terms of I think that's mind blowing what's currently happening.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. However, I just rather set this a little bit more confrontational in terms of team size is gone. I really think roles will develop into in different areas. I also think agencies will have a different role in the future, rather a more pivotal role, I would call, in terms of really managing partnerships in such a way that they are rather managing the partnerships successfully. And this could also mean in terms of helping, because I think rather agencies will be there in terms of helping that automation process. This is something that can't be done by organization, or in most of cases, heavily by organizations themselves. So those organizations really need a partner or an agency to do this together as a partnership, because that's a big transformation. What I just said to you sounds like click and I can do it.
Yeah, just put on Lovable. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. This is so easy. Well, why is not everyone doing this, right? That's exactly not it. I think if you think about big organizations, this is a huge transformation process in terms of also making sure that technical capabilities, data capabilities, this is a whole tech roadmap that needs to be established to make this work, right? So I think those agencies will rather become a role. That's how I see it in terms of helping implementing that. And that's a multi-year process, specifically if you think about really big organizations.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you talking right there about that. And I'm like, from the clients that I've talked to be able to do what you just explained, there is like hundreds of pages of documentation that they have not yet written that needs to be created for this to even be possible to automate.
Exactly. I agree.
So that's like tech is there, but the private companies aren't. That's how I'm seeing it right now.
Yeah, or you need the help of the agencies. I think where the agencies also can step in and help doing actually, first of all, this fundamental work.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, where work is starting, because I still came from a world, if I've shared this with you, in a B2B environment where we had multiple data levels which worked independently, and somehow I needed to use them to still send CRM communication. So coming from that complex world in terms of where certain you have data layers not communicating with each other, all of a sudden this is only working efficiently and in a full extent if you have these kind of connections happening in the background. That's also what they explained, right? It's not one click in another, but really those things need to work smoothly together to have then also good input and output. Otherwise, it's like with AI as well, right? ChatGPT shit in, shit out. So
100%.
there it becomes important that you have that kind of fundament fixed. And I think this agency would really help in terms of getting that base right and setting the fundament, which is really, for some companies, might take some time to implement before they then can build that lever of the agents working autonomously. Or what is your opinion? Maybe
No, I agree.
Or what do you think will the agency? Maybe I would also like to hear your opinion. How do you think will the agency, what will be their role in such a setup?
I totally agree with everything you said. And I do think that we will get to a stage where it is possible to do this in one click. And someone can sell the entire structure, right? The actual framework. If you wanted to do this in a click, you can use this framework. Here it is, cost this much money, but you need to fill in these details and this information in the framework for it to work, right? And I think the agency is going to fit in quite well with, because sometimes clients are a bit lazy or they just have way too much to do. And then they're like, I don't want to fill it out. I'd rather hire someone who knows how to fill this out. Where do I put that? Where do I put this? So I'll just hire someone who's really efficient at this. And that's where I think agencies can come in and have a great fit, not only in terms of translating the company information to the structures that are going to be probably built by these big platforms, like even with OpenAI launching this like agentic node thing where you can build now the multi-agent workflows, like just this week. Like Google also has their agent SDK or whatever it's called, and I'm sure Amazon is also building or maybe even has launched something, but I haven't heard about it. So they should scream about it more if it's already there. But I do think that that's where agencies kind of have to fit in, because everything else is going to get commoditized extremely fast. And then it's going to be a zero-sum game of who can be the cheapest. And that's going to be hard to defend in economies where it's expensive to live. So then the value has to really shift in like how you do compensation for these type of agencies, because it just won't make sense.
Agree, yeah.
Like let's say in Germany, like if you hire, I don't know, an agency for 5,000 euros, which is probably quite a normal low mid-size contract. How are you going to defend that when the business owner understands that I can just do everything that they do within a click? That's going to be a very hard thing to defend. So they have to defend it somewhere else. That's how I'm seeing it, at least.
Yeah, I agree. Or they can actually, for me, it's not always the price game as well, but maybe they just bring more quantity out there, which is at a higher quality, right? Because you always have this price, quantity, quality kind of thing. But then they kind of have more quantity at the same quality they're offering, or it's out there, right? So I think it might not be always the price thing, depending what the output is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a fair value exchange, obviously you can have a higher price. And then usually there's two things involved. It's either speed or it's quality. Like how fast can you do it and how good is it? That's usually what agencies can sell. It's either speed or quality, right? That's why you take them in. So that is going to be the key thing that unlocks like is what the agency sells unique, or is everyone else selling exactly the same thing? Because if everyone is selling exactly the same thing, then it's going to be a question of like who's the cheapest, because everyone can do it. But if they have a unique selling point, then they can charge more. That's how I see it, at least.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So it's going to be very weird to see now, like all of these freelancers that are just rock stars just multiply themselves through these agents and just skyrocket, because I think that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, so you see rather a more focus on freelancers versus actually agencies stepping in.
I think so.
Okay.
Because I think what you described with IBM, to me, it sounds like structures, right? And it sounds like, how do you fill the information for the structure to have a good foundation? And at some cases, I think you can automate so many steps of that you won't need more than one person to do it quickly. I think you can probably get to that point. And then there's going to be so much value that it might be hard even for agencies to keep top talent, because they can just be like, I can kind of do what my entire team does on my own and make way more money. And I think keeping talent is going to be super hard. So either they have to start paying them way more and charging the clients way more, or they're going to lose top talent. And I don't know if the big agencies are ready for it.
I think that's an interesting point you touched upon, because this can really happen, right? Because you need then certain specification or certain skills that are necessary.
Yeah.
And how do you then keep that talent within your own organization or within that agency setup to keep them kind of satisfied in the role they are in? Yeah, I think that's a very interesting way of thought. Yeah, and it will be difficult. Agree.
Yeah, because why should they not leave and be in the Philippines or Thailand or wherever they want to be and just like charge way more because no one else can replace them? I think we're in for a big shift, and it's exciting and it's scary. Do you have anything you want to promote? Anything you want to shout out where people should reach out to you based on like what they need or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm definitely welcoming everyone who wants to connect, wants to exchange, because I'm really like to also exchange on those topics as well, like digital transformation, performance marketing, CRM. Please reach out. And I'm also looking currently for a new job opportunity. So if anyone is interested, please reach out to me.
They better act fast, because I'm sure that's not going to be an offer that stands for very long. But thank you so much, Julia. This was an amazing episode. I'll end the recording here.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to The Humble Venture, the podcast where you get to listen in on conversations with business leaders, entrepreneurs, and high-performing talent. If you liked the episode, give us a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so that you can listen to the next episode. And if you haven't already, check out the previous ones. They're really good, and I promise that they will only keep improving. Now, if you need help with marketing or AI automation, feel free to reach out to us at hvg.media. Our talent comes directly from TikTok, Meta, Google, and some of the best marketing agencies in the world. So feel free to reach out if you need any help with any of that. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and don't forget to stay humble.